Hi, I'm indie fantasy author Melinda Kucsera, and in this episode of Fantasy Lore and More, I have Glen Dahlgren with me. Did I get that right? I forgot to ask you before we started how to pronounce it.
Yeah, it's not
I'm usually good about that, but I lost the tab and couldn't find StreamYard, so we had some technical difficulties. It's been a long work day. But yeah, so we have Glen Dahlgren here to talk about his newly completed series, The Chronicles of Chaos. And I already have questions because what is this chaos and who's chronicling it? Why are they just chronicling it? Shouldn't they do something about the chaos or the chaos?
Should do something about the chaos.
So tell us about it.
Yeah, so I'm going to start by just showing off the books.
Can you just describe them for those who are not going to be who are not going to be able to see it or just listening?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's true. There's going to be
use your author powers of description.
Right. Well, I'm just going to read the blurb to the series. That there you go. Okay, the 99 gods of order, good, evil, law, war, and many, many more grip the world like a vice. Priests of war, the gods' iron fist, collect tithes from the common folk, auctioning off anyone who can't pay to become property of the temples. Against this suffering oppression rise the Harbingers of Chaos, rebels desperate to unleash chaos itself, imprisoned millennia ago. Their hope? A prophecy of the child of chaos, destined to crack open the vault and reshape the world. But the key, it said, lies within the very gods they defy. The battle spills beyond the mortal realm, seeping into the dreaming, where imagination bleeds into reality and gods clash in an eternal war. A handful of mortals, gifted with access to this perilous landscape, find themselves thrust into the heart of the conflict, their choices holding the fate of their world in the balance. This is the Chronicles of Chaos, a war for freedom, fueled by prophecy and defiance, fought on battlefields both divine and mortal. Join these young heroes in an epic and unforgettable journey. There you go. There's my blurb.
I feel like I've read this. I think I have the series. Like, wait, this sounds really familiar. Did I read this? I read many books.
I'll show you the book. So this is the first one. It's Game of War. And it won actually a bunch of awards, one of which was the Reader's Favorite Gold Medal and the Dante Rossetti Award.
And it's shiny too. How did you get the cover? It to be because it's reflective. The two awards.
That's because they're stickers.
Oh, those are stickers. Because on my screen it's very small, so I could just see it's reflecting the light, the stickers. And I'm like, wait, how'd you do that?
No,
things on my covers.
If you win those awards, they will send you stickers, and then when you run out, you have to order more. The thing is, I actually do a lot of signing events, and I go through those stickers like nobody's business. So I'm constantly ordering more. So here's the second book. Actually, it's the first one I wrote. It's book 1. That other one was book 0. This is Child of Chaos.
And wait. So you wrote book 0 after book 1? Okay, we need to talk about that because that's interesting.
Mm-hmm. So it also won the Reader's Favorite Gold and won the American Fiction Award and a few others. I think the Independent Author Network Award and a bunch of others. So that was, this one took me 20 years to write.
And that's book 1.
That's book 1. And then book 0 and all the others took me about a year each to write. This is book 2, which is the third book. And it's called The House of Prophecy. It won the American Fiction Award. And then those are the 3 books that were out. The final book in the series, I finally have a proof I can actually show you. It's called Realm of Gods. And the reviews it's getting are amazing.
That's awesome.
All the arcs are coming in. And I think it's my best book. People are calling it a masterpiece. I didn't say that. Somebody else said that. But maybe it's true. Who knows? So I'm really proud of this book. I leave nothing on the table for the finale.
That's awesome. Okay, so is this your first book series that you ever wrote?
Yes. So for about, I would say maybe 25 years or so, I was making computer games. And I was working with, I made games like Wheel of Time, based off of Robert Jordan's work, the Wheel of Time series. I've read
some of those.
I made Death Gates. Actually, I have some of those I can show you. So this is Wheel of Time. I did the Death Gate cycle, or Death Gate based on the Death.
I loved those 7 books. They were I loved them so much. I did not want that series to end. I read it.
I was a huge fan
I
of
read
Margaret
on the
Weiss and Tracy
trains.
Hickman.
Yeah.
I read all the Dragonlance stuff that they made. I read obviously I read the Deathgate Cycle, and I loved it so much. When I was part of Legend Entertainment, we had the opportunity to go after licenses that we liked.
Yeah.
And so I said, here are the ones I want. I want Wheel of Time. I want Deathgate Cycle. I want Xanth from Piers Anthony. I want, all of these. And we got a lot of them because we were early in that whole process. And we were making adventure games. There wasn't a lot of competition for it. And people were excited about getting into this new medium. So yes, I got to work with Jordan on Wheel of Time. I got to work with Margaret Weiss on Deathgate. Yeah, that was amazing. She actually was a dream to work with. I really enjoyed that.
She's into gaming too, I've heard.
Well, yeah, she started out as a gamer. I mean, they made Dragonlance at TSR, so absolutely.
That's what I heard, and I was like, "Oh, that's so neat." I'm not a gamer, but I think that's so cool.
So actually, I was pitching Wheel of Time, the game, to publishers. And one of those publishers was Activision. And so we went to Activision, but the night before I was about to pitch, they said, we like the game, but we don't like the license. We don't want it to be Wheel of Time. Come up with a different premise and pitch that to us. And so the night before I do this pitch, I do it. I come up with a different premise.
I can understand why they wouldn't want the Wheel of Time. Like the first book is literally a travel log. But the stuff that happens is like the very end of the book.
I don't think that was their concern. Their concern was, is it worth, getting that audience for this game, or is the reason they want the game something different? And the truth is that we didn't end up going with Activision. We ended up going with GT, who did want the license, because we were kind of working at the Epic guys, the Unreal Technology guys, and they were in bed with GT, so it made sense for us to go with GT. Yeah. But so we made Wheel of Time. It was great, really well received. But at the end of that, I said, okay, what am I going to do now? And then I remembered that premise that I came up with for Activision, and I thought about it. I said, is there a different game there? Is there something else I could do with that? And I realized it wasn't a game. It was a novel, and it really wanted to be written. It took me 20 years to write that book because I was making computer games at full time. Right. But in the background, I was writing that book, and 20 years later, I finally released it, and that was Chaos.
Congratulations!
Thank you very much.
How did you decide that it was a book and not a game? Was there like a criteria you applied to? I'm just curious because I've not heard of someone who's like, I have this awesome idea. Is it a book? Is it a game? Like that's a cool conundrum. Right. So like how did you decide? Like what?
Because in and of itself, it didn't demand mechanics. It didn't say, this is how players are going to enjoy themselves in this world. But the world was really cool. And the story in that world was really cool. And honestly, I love putting players in positions where they're exploring a story. But their choices have to be meaningful. Right. In order for the experience to be, impactful to them. In order for them to invest themselves. Now, the more that they get invested in their experience, the less authorial I can be, the less directed I can be. So the story that I wanted to tell in that world was very directed. I wanted control over those characters. I wanted to, craft that experience more than I could do in a game. So that's why it was a novel. I mean, it was weird for me because I'd never written a novel. I had no idea sort of what I was up against, which is one of the reasons it took me 20 years. But I'm really glad that I had that. I figured, I'm just never going to finish this thing. It's going to take forever because I'm always working on games. But finally, I actually got some really good feedback from a few people, and it just made all the difference. And I finally finished it, and I'm really proud of it. I'm proud of the world that created. And one of the things that people really like about these books is the world.
That's really neat. I mean, it sounds like a really neat world, so we should probably talk about the world. Oh, actually, no. Sure. Before we talk about the world, why did book 0 come after you wrote book 1? Right.
So book 1, I thought was going to be a one-shot. I never envisioned it as a series. I mean, obviously, I'm taking 20 years to write one book. I'm not going to take another 20 years to write book 2. And I kind of blow up the world at the end. So I looked at that and I said, okay, well, I want to write a reader magnet. I actually was going with a small press, and they were putting together a box set of novellas. I figured, okay, I'll write a little prequel that will lead people into this world. But I don't really want to write what happens after that, because I kind of really do major damage to my world at the end. And so I'll do that. I'll write a little novella. Well, I don't know how to write a novella, clearly. I ended up writing a novel, and I severed my relationship with that small press, and I'm really glad I did. I took complete control of my books, and then I released that book, that prequel. And what I did was I focused on a character that everybody loved in that first book. So I took that character, I made the prequel, but a lot of the thinking I did about that prequel enabled me to move forward. So a lot of thinking about book 2 ended up becoming part of the prequel, which is kind of weird, because what I tell everybody is, you can read those in either order, but you need to read both before moving on to book 2. So feel free. And a lot of, like in my signings, I have couples all the time. And one of the pitches I say is, one of you can buy one of you can buy the other. You read them and then you switch, and then you can talk about them. And people like to do that. So yes, you need to read both, and then you can move on to 3, and then 4 just wraps everything. I leave nothing on the table. Actually, I did some soul searching at the end, and I said, how much do I really want to reveal? How open should the kimono get about the underpinnings of my world and how everything was made and all that? And I figured, I'm just going to, as we spoke about before this thing, I'm just going to throw it all out there because I want it to be as compelling as possible. And so far, the reaction is off the chart. People love it. People really get into not just, it's not a dry exploration of history. It is this, you absolutely need to understand some of this stuff because it has immediate impact on the story. And it's a lot of fun.
So is there a lot that people need to understand, or do you limit it and like drip it out across?
Yeah. Okay. So it's YA. And so everything is very fast paced. It's very hard to put down. There are no info dumps. I keep proper nouns to a minimum. So it's really approachable, almost, as approachable as it gets. People tell me that they take the audiobooks. So I record the audiobooks too. I did all
that's what I think I have is the audiobooks, because I'm an audiobook fanatic, and like every time I see your name, I'm like, that name is so darn familiar. I feel like I was like, I have so many audiobooks across different things. So like after this, I'm gonna have to check.
So when I did computer games, I was the audio director and I was directing all the voice. So I had actors coming in and I would, get what I needed out of them. But I would also take some of those roles for myself. But I was always really kind of iffy. I didn't know how much I liked my own voice in terms of, should I really have it in a professional product?
You're like the third peasant in the graveyard.
In a couple of them I are. I'm in Wheel of Time, I'm like White Cloak 2. But in Deathgate, I'm actually Lord Tsar. No, I'm not Lord Tsar. I'm the Sangdrax, the dragon. And but the reason I was able to convince myself to do that is because I modulated my voice down. I see. And so I sound, really evil and cool, but I understand the material better than anybody because I wrote the material. And so when it came time to do audiobooks for me, I went through the audition process. I had lots of people read, and I'm listening to all this. I'm like, I can do this better. So why don't I? So I did my own audition, and I sent those auditions to people who I trusted, who'd never heard me before, Facebook author friends. And almost all of them chose me as the person who should read it. So I'm like, all right, I have to now. And it's so much work. It's so much work. Editing is the worst.
Yeah. I narrated a shorter book of mine, and it's
crazy. And
I hated my voice by the end.
they're like 120,000 words. And for me, I am a perfectionist. Like, you listen to my audiobooks, they sound perfect. It sounds like I read them perfect right off the jump. Yeah. But I will slice and dice every single sentence. Almost every sentence I do like 3 takes of.
what I was doing.
Yeah.
And it was a lot of time and effort. And I was like, I am never doing this again.
Yeah, I don't blame you.
Audiobook narrators are amazing human beings.
Yeah. Well, you know, the best thing about it, though, that I learned when doing the audiobook is there's no better editing tool, which means because you're reading it out loud and recording it, you're going to be very aware of any mistakes in your manuscript.
Yeah.
So it's always the last thing I do before I release. So right now, I have all of my lines recorded. I did that right before I locked in the manuscript. But now I have 13 hours to edit. And it's going to take me probably 5 times that in actual hours to edit.
Yeah.
So, but I love it. I love it for that. And that I know my manuscript is 99.9% error free. I'm hoping it's 100%, but it's
there's
really
that
close.
one comma.
You never know. I found even like little spacing mistakes in there.
Yeah.
But it's really good for that. I'm all in as far as that's concerned. I'm not in as far as the editing is concerned.
And you have to do all the voices for all the characters and keeping that. That was where I had problems. I couldn't remember because I'd be narrating it, every night a little bit after work. And like by the 5th night, I couldn't remember like what was the voice of Nolo? I don't even remember.
Hey,
how does Jordan sound?
Characters that you've done 2 books ago.
Yeah. Why are there 20 characters in this scene? I don't have enough voices for that.
So here's the way that I look at it. First of all, I have a keyword that I use for every character or a phrase. In order to get me into the head of that character. So like there's one character that sounds like kind of like a surfer dude. And his keyword is dude. So before every line I'm going, dude. And then I say the line. I always cut
that's
that
a good
part
idea.
And so what I do is I put the least amount of pressure on myself as I possibly can, which is the bar that I need to hit is as long as you can understand the difference between the people who are speaking in a conversation, then I'm good. Anything over that, I think is gravy, is a bonus. But as
an audiobook listener, I agree with you. Like at the end of the day, that's what I just want to know. I know that 2 people are talking and be able to like tell, because sometimes some books that I have listened to, it's just the dialogue back and forth. And if you can't differentiate them by voice, you have no idea who is talking because there's no dialogue tags. They're not doing anything. And sometimes you can't put dialogue tags and you can't put actions because they're sitting in a cafe discussing, whatever, because that's what the scene calls for. And like,
yeah, that's true or not. I mean, it's really kind of up to the author. And if they're thinking about audiobooks, then they're going to put in he raised his eyebrow.
No, they're not. Most books are not written for audio. I can categorically guarantee this. Yeah. I've listened to so many audiobooks. The vast majority of them are not written for audio.
And those are authors who didn't have to record it themselves.
Yeah. You can tell when one is, though.
Right.
It's very different.
If you're an author who records it yourself, you're going to keep that in mind as you're writing. Even things like, when people are thinking things inside their head, sometimes I will put tags for those too. He thought, he realized, so that the listener doesn't get confused as to what's going on. Because I do those in their voice.
Yes. When I was reading it, I added that in, even though it wasn't in the text, because I was like, I'd rather it be clear that they're not saying this out loud.
Mm-hmm.
I'd rather
an audiobook. It's not unclear unless you put a little echo or something on it. And I don't want to do that because I like to save those for like when the gods talk.
Or they're in an echoey chamber.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
And that would get annoying if they do a lot of thinking, if you add like the echoing and it's like, yeah. And then if you need it for something else, then it becomes confusing. Yeah. Right. I totally agree on that. I think it's better that it's just a character talking, and because then it's clear that it's that character, and if you have some tag or some way of letting us know that they're thinking that.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I try to do that. Sometimes it's not as clear, but I figure you'll get over it if you get a little confused.
Yeah. Yeah. As long as they're not thinking something that they're not going to tell someone, then you need to be super clear on that, because you don't want them to think, oh, they just said it to them. Well, why does this person not know? It's like, no, they were just thinking that. It was never said.
Yep.
And that's how you can tell when things are written for audio and not,
I don't even remember how I got here. What was the question that I was answering?
Oh, I asked about the why you wrote the prequel after the first book.
Yes,
I think we covered that, and then we went from there into and then I think we talked about why you decided to make it a book versus a video game. And I think we sort of segued from there because you also record them. I think I made a comment that like I'm an audiobook fanatic, and that's probably where I have these. I think that's how we got into that. And you were talking about how you narrate it. So yeah, I got a head for audiobooks.
That's great. Yeah. And I personally think that, the author reading the book is the best way to go if they have the talent to do it, because nobody understands the material better. I mean, I know what my characters sound like. I know, which words they're supposed to be emphasizing. And I will not rest until it is exactly the way I pictured it in my head. I will do like 5-6 takes of a line if I have to. And I'm killing myself on the editing end, but I'll still do it.
I have to say that as like an audiobook listener, I'm definitely more forgiving of like if the author is narrating and if they don't get the voice for each character exactly right, because when an author is reading it, they don't have to do anything to it with their voice to try and show it's a different character. Like just sometimes the way that they are reading it, like I can't explain it, but like I've listened to authors like on this podcast. Even I have listened to. We have over 70 interviews on here, and in almost all of them, they've read something, and there was some bit of dialogue. And these are not author narrators, and I could always tell who was talking. It's just because you, as the author, know the material, as you were saying so well. You may emphasize. I think it's some of it. I think it was even unconscious. I don't even think they were trying to differentiate it. They were more focused on like not tripping over words, and
the character was speaking through them.
That's what it was. And like, I never had any problems telling who was speaking. So like, I think as an author, you're right. Cause we know the material, we definitely have a leg up. And I think that like listeners are also a little bit more forgiving of the author reading it, because authors have other ways of telling us who is talking than doing different voices and things.
I think that's true. Although I have gotten a lot of feedback from listeners who really appreciate the effort I put into my voices too.
Oh so, yeah, we love a good performance.
Yeah, if you get an author who has the ability to do voices, then I think that's the best possible product. Yeah.
But if you're like at a reading or something, like it's just hearing the author read it, even if they're not a narrator, is like really powerful.
Yeah,
it's an experience, and it's been an honor and a pleasure being on this podcast. One of the reasons why I keep doing it is I get to hear authors read to me. And even though they might think they're the worst reader and they might stumble around, but it's still magical hearing an author read the words that they wrote and how they choose to voice the character. It's just, I find it fascinating.
It makes total sense that you're an audiobook fan.
I'm showing my true colors.
And that you would do this podcast being an audiobook fan. That
it's just fascinating. Yeah. It's also fascinating how people who are not familiar with the material read it. Like I said, I'm a huge audiobook fanatic. I feel like we drifted a little far from this. So we were talking about the series, and the last book, the Realm of Gods, is coming out. That's the fourth book in the Chronicles of Chaos. And as we were talking about before the podcast began, it is coming out on Tuesday, February 27th. Today is, for anybody keeping score, February 23rd, 2024. So if we make any predictions about time, we are making it from that date.
Yes, exactly.
I'd like to put that in every podcast so that anything you say after this, that we have centered ourselves in time,
right?
And they're able to do the math and figure out what that is.
I hate the fact that I have my first signing of the launch season tomorrow. I do not have my books. I didn't think I would. I made I signed up the event knowing that I probably wouldn't have my books, but I really tried hard to get them for this event.
Well, you could do pre-orders. You can get people to pre-order, and then you can send them the signed one when you get it.
And it's a little tricky because this one's at Barnes & Noble.
Okay.
Yeah. So what I can do is, I did this before on like Black Friday. if somebody buys the entire series, I will give them a coupon for a discount if they buy the final one through me.
Yes, you can do the QR code thing.
Yeah, and at first, like, you know, they didn't understand what I was doing, and they came over and like, what? We can't give that discount on the book, you know, if they come back. I said, no, it's not through you. All I'm trying to do is give them an incentive to buy the series here. And they're like, oh, okay, sounds good. Yes, you can go ahead and do that. But they're very sensitive about making sure that I'm not promising something for them.
Yeah, no, and that makes sense that they'd be cool with that, because they have to buy the 3 books today at Barnes and Noble, exactly. Which means that Barnes and Noble is getting their cut.
Yeah, and I just give them a coupon that has, you know, some information about how you get the 4th one from me. So because
that's very cool.
It's hard to come up with an incentive for people to buy the whole series at Barnes and Noble, because there's no room. I mean, Barnes and Noble takes 40% off the top, and there's nothing you can do about that. But I will tell you, and don't get me wrong, I love Barnes and Noble. I do Barnes and Nobles all around the Bay Area. I'm right by San Francisco.
I see. Cool.
We have tons of them. And I'm also really lucky in that we have a lot of half-price books. And you think half-price books, they're a used bookstore, you know, well, why are they so important? Well, it turns out they get the same kind of foot traffic as a Barnes and Noble. And I've sold in both places between 60 and 90 books in one signing. And half-price books allows me to sell directly to the customer, which means I can offer a discount there, and I take all the money. They're just nice. Awesome. They just want to, you know, bring in authors and have them be part of their experience. So
that's cool.
I'm going to every single one. There's 4 of them in the area, and I'm doing every single one in this launch tour.
That's so neat. I've never done a book signing before. That's very cool.
I do a lot of I talk with a lot of authors about book signings, because I only really started them in the last year, but now I'm all about them. I make more money in book signings than I do in any other avenue of sales.
Wow.
And that's I'm amazing. Really good at it. The thing is, people talk in our community, in our indie author community, they talk a lot about events, and those are like the big cons.
Yeah, I've never been to those either.
I've not done any of those, and I was kind of interested in it. I mean, it sounds fun, and I like the idea, but the truth is, you think about it on paper, it
sounds overwhelming.
No, I'm not worried about that at all.
Yeah,
what I am worried about is you're paying for a table, and then you're competing with everybody else who's there to sell their stuff, and so what's the ROI on that? And then there's travel, unless there's one right around the corner from where you live. So you're investing a fair amount of money before you ever make one sale.
Yeah.
You go to a half-price books or a Barnes & Noble, there's nobody there competing with you. You are the only author, and you are there right in the front, where people are going to see you right as they come in, and I'm gonna sell you a book, and then I'm going to keep most of the money that comes from that sale. I don't see really a better way to move books to interested readers. And I've got a really good pitch now. And I talked to you a little bit about, you know, my computer game background and
which is fascinating.
And I end with the possibility that these books could become a TV series or movie. And that's not, it's not just a pipe dream. I mean, nothing's for sure. But when I did the Wheel of Time game. And I did a podcast about the Wheel of Time game, and there was someone listening to that podcast, and it was the executive producer of the Wheel of Time TV series.
Oh, wow.
Who contacted me, and together we relaunched the game to coincide with the launch of the series.
Oh, that's so cool.
He's now evaluating my books for a potential TV series or movie. And not only that, my old boss at Legend, which is where I made those games, is now head of games at Netflix. And so he's shopping my books at Netflix.
That's amazing.
So you never know. I mean, the last thing I do in my pitch is, you know, you walked into this Barnes & Noble or half-price books or whatever, on the one day I'm signing first edition copies of these books before they blow up. And they're like, that's not a bad deal. And then I'll sign it for them, and we take a picture for them, and it turns into a whole event. So if you listen to my pitch all the way through, there's a 50% chance you'll buy it.
That's very cool. I think I already have the books.
I wasn't trying to sell you.
Sure. Because I think I have bought them before the podcast even began. So the pitch worked.
Right. Yes. It went back in time and worked on
exactly. Yeah, because it was like before this, I was like, I think I've read these. I think I have these. I may not have all of them, but
Well, you need to get to the finale because I
I
swear
have to go
it's my
back and
best book.
check. My next credit is February 28th, which is great because the last one comes out on the 27th. So
Well, the audiobook will not be out on the 27th.
that's fine. My credits
Yeah.
renew once a month, anyways, and I usually
And
buy
there's
more at some point.
you probably need to get some of the other books before you get to the finale anyway. By the time you're ready to get the finale, I'll have it out, I'm hoping.
I probably have to reread them too because it's probably been. I'm pretty sure I have them. If I don't after this, I am going to get them because the pitch worked.
Part of my pitch is also talking about Piers Anthony. So do you know Piers Anthony?
I know of him. I don't think I've read any of the books.
Yeah. So
I lived in a small town in Putnam County, New York, and we had a Barnes and Noble about 10 minutes away, but that came later. Before that, for the longest time, we had a Borders book, but it was very small. And I don't remember ever seeing
there any
his
Borders
books.
that were small?
Actually, no, it wasn't Borders. It was the other one. What was that other
B.
chain?
Dalton or
Yes.
B. Dalton?
That's what it was. It was small.
There was B. Dalton and Walden books. Those are the two in my childhood.
There was like two shelving units side by side that were fantasy and sci-fi.
Right.
And that was it. And that was all I had access to until I started working in the city and could go to the Barnes and Noble on 50 something at Straight. It was only like 7 or 8 blocks from my office. And that was humongous. And the first time I walked in there, I saw the Lord of the Rings trilogy on CD narrated by Rob Inglis for $10. The whole trilogy. The thing was like a foot and a half long, and I was like, "This is just fate. This is going to be my best friend. This is where my paycheck is going to be going now."
And
Metro North and Barnes and Noble on 50 whatever at Street.
And it started your love with audiobooks at that point.
Yeah, actually, yes. I joined Audible not long after that. So, yeah, that's where it all began.
So, Piers Anthony, like when a lot of people don't know who he is because he's before their time. A lot of people are, in their 20s or younger that I'm talking to. But Piers Anthony was an author that I grew up reading. So in high school, he was like my fantasy author hero. And so when I finished my first book, I really wanted him to read it. And we had worked with him on making Xanth, a computer game based on his world, Xanth. Mm-hmm. And so I asked him, and this is why I always do a voice. I asked him if he'd read it. He goes, "I'm not going to have time to read your book. Even if I did, you wouldn't like what I have to say about it because no one ever does." And I said, well, I sent it to him anyway.
Authors speak for like too many people send me their books. I'll never get to them all.
He actually is, or he used to be, a voracious reader. And so I knew that if I put it in his hand, there might be a chance that he'd read it anyway. And he did. He read it in one night.
But what was your what did you think your chances of getting a good opinion from him were?
I had no idea, but it didn't matter. If it was a bad opinion, I just wouldn't tell anybody.
I see. You just wanted him to have the book. Bonus points if he reads it.
And if he reads it and he likes it, then I've just won. I've won the lottery. And he read it in one night. And the next day he gave me this review, this glowing review that I could not have foreseen. And he loved it so much, he gave me my first cover quote. So I was on cloud 9. I mean, I don't know if you've ever had your childhood hero tell you that you're doing something right. But man, when I got that email, it floored me. I fell over looking at that thing. And I don't know if you can...
I can imagine a little bit because like my favorite author once replied to a comment that I made on their post on Facebook, and like that was amazing.
Yeah, it says this is what fantasy fiction should be. That was pretty cool.
That's very cool.
So yeah, that's again part of my pitch. I mean, I've got this whole story that sort of weaves through who I am as an author, talks a little bit about the books, but signings are not really about selling your book. I mean, they kind of are, but they're really about selling you as an author. And if you can get someone to understand the passion that you bring to your stories and, what you've done to make them, they will come along for the ride. And then they want to walk away with a memory and they want to read the books. Actually, the best thing is when people come back. Because I send them away with my books. I have no idea if they are going to like them or not. I hope they are. I think they're good books, but it's when they come back. Like I had whole families come back that read them together. The dad was listening to the audiobook, the mother was reading the book with the daughter, and they came back with questions. And they loved it, but they wanted to know more, and they wanted to get in my head, so they came back to another signing. That was wonderful. I'd say that's like way better than making the sale. It's just hearing back that people really enjoyed the experience of being in my world and listening to those books.
That's incredible.
Yeah. Yeah, I swear, doing these signings just changed my life, changed my author life.
That's amazing. I'm not very outgoing, so I'd probably hide in the corner if I did a signing.
Well, the first Barnes & Noble signing I did, they said, if you've never done this before, let me just tell you, there are two types of authors, and there's the one that's successful, and that's the one that's not on his phone or sitting back and letting people walk by. And then there's the one who's constantly engaging. And so I'll tell you, here's the secret to my success, and that's this right here. I will say.
Okay, so it's a bookmark?
It is a bookmark. I'll say, would you like a free bookmark?
I see.
Who says no to that?
That's
almost
true.
No one. And so
And Barnes & Noble's okay with that because they do a brisk business on selling bookmarks.
They love it. Because, they look at what I'm doing. I'm selling more than all of them, all the booksellers there combined in the day that I'm there. My local Barnes & Noble in Concord said, we want to give you a job because you're selling so many books. And this is key to it because it's the icebreaker. Once you say, and they take the bookmark and say, oh, do you like fantasy? And they say, yes. I say, oh, well, then we need to have a conversation. And then I explain who I am. I'm a local award-winning fantasy author. And here are the awards I've got. I say, and the reason I'm telling you this is not, hey, look how awesome I am. Just want you to let you know that my books come pre-vetted. Just like to let you know that if you like fantasy, chances are you'd like my books. Just get that out of the way. Now, let me tell you about the world. And then I go in and I talk about the world and, the story behind the books. And then I flow into how they were made, why they would be interested in, the order of the books, talk about the computer games and all that. And by the end, they're just mesmerized. And they are really excited about the series that they've never heard of before. A new author with new books that they've never heard of before, there's a 50% chance they're buying it. I think that's just amazing. I can't believe that I sell that many.
Oh, wow. That's really neat. Oh, I don't know. I'm not an outgoing person. I
totally get that.
For people a bookmark, but I don't know that I would be comfortable engaging everybody who walks by. Like people who look interested, yes. I also could be on the phone writing. I write a lot on my phone. So if there was any dead time, I would pull up the manuscript of the next book and just start writing on it. And there's a good chance I might forget that I'm supposed to be doing something until someone asks me a question.
So what I do is if there's any downtime, there usually isn't. Again, these places have great foot traffic. There's usually they have constantly people coming in. And I'm all about I'll be giving out bookmarks to anyone coming in. But if I do have downtime, I'm just stickering books because I don't sticker them ahead of time. I just sticker them on, then put them on the pile. And I'm selling enough that I need to constantly be doing that. So I don't get my chance to even look at my phone because I do not want to get distracted. I want to be totally present and there for the people who could possibly be customers.
I guess I didn't realize that Reader's Favorite Gift has stickers. It's I didn't get them when I got the 5-star one for one of my books.
You can get a 5-star.
Maybe I missed the email or the memo on that one. I do work a lot.
So if you get a 5-star review,
I did.
You can buy stickers for that, but they will not give those to you for free. If you get the gold medal or the bronze medal or the silver medal or even the honorable mention in there,
one of those, the gold or the silver. I don't remember which one because this was in 2016, 2017, and it was the original version of Cursebreaker Enchanted. I can't even remember if it was gold or silver. It was one of them.
So yes, if you get one of those medals, then they will give you a certain number of those for free, and then you can order more if those run out. but you have to tell them. You have to actually go into the thing and
I think
let
I
them know.
didn't. Yeah, because I never. Yeah, I was very new to all of this back in 2016. So I did get one of those, and I don't think I followed up on that.
I actually went to the reader's favorite presentation ceremony in Miami because both of my first 2 books won gold.
Oh,
and
wow.
I figured, and because they didn't have one of those because of COVID 1 year. And so they combined 2 years into one presentation ceremony. I'm like, when am I ever going to do this again? Have 2 books that I'm collecting gold medals for? Never. It's never going to happen. I might as well go ahead and bite the bullet and do it. And I did it, and it was wonderful. I met great fantasy authors. Actually, I at the end, I got all the fantasy authors who won a prize together, and we made a little Facebook group, and I made some great contacts. It was extraordinary. I actually really like Reader's Favorite. I think they're one of my favorite competitions.
I think I missed a memo that there was an awards thing. I did.
You have to pay attention a little more, I think.
But to be fair, like in 2016, I was very deeply in debt and working a lot.
Oh, I would not have gone to Miami.
I was writing. And so like, even if I probably did know, but like financially, like I couldn't afford groceries until Amazon paid me. That was grocery money. I was totally living on that for a few years, all because in the financial crash in like 2007 or 2008, because I worked in New York City, and the company, their finances crashed with that, and they laid off most of the people who worked there, and it took 2 years to find another position, and I ran out of everything, like benefits, savings, and I was living on credit cards until I got that job. And because there was more people looking for jobs than jobs available at the time, the job paid me half my previous salary. Oh, man. So the crawl out of that debt was very slow and very painful. And it's only recently that like I could actually, I was looking at the finances, and I realized this year that like I probably couldn't afford to go to any of the author things because they're still very expensive, like some East Coast. And then going to the big author thing in Vegas, the airfare for that alone is pretty darn expensive for me. So, but maybe next year I could financially swing it. So that was exciting, realizing that I crawled out of that deep debt finally.
It takes a lot to convince me to go to something like that too. I mean, I really have to be convinced that it's worth it. I haven't gone to Vegas. I haven't gone to the 20 bucks to 50K.
Yeah, I haven't either.
But people keep telling me I need to. I have friends that go that are trying to drag me there. I did go to the Chanticleer because I was up for an award.
Oh, that's an award thing.
Yeah, so they have the Ozmas, they have the Dante Rossetti, they have a bunch of category awards. And actually, I won this there. So I managed to go to that one too. But the reason that I went is because they're in Seattle, and so my father lives in Seattle. And so I took it as an opportunity to go. Well, I'm on the West Coast. Yeah. But I got a chance to visit my father and also go to this conference and win that award, and that was just awesome. It was a family trip. I took the whole family, and they got to see me. I snuck them into the banquet ceremony, and they got to see me win. So that's really
very cool. Yeah, I've not been to the authors thing in Vegas, but I did go to Vegas for a trade show / conference for a different industry. So, in like 2006 or 2005 for another company that I worked for at the time. Then it was like 3,000 attendees. It was very overwhelming. It was very difficult to get to classes, to the different like classes and things. The exhibition hall was just the crush of people in there. Like, I didn't enjoy it at all. My sister ended up coming with me. That was when she was still alive. And she's like, can we just go do something, anything? Because this is like, there were so many people there. Like, she just wandered into the thing and no one really noticed. Like, there was just too many people at the thing. Right. And like, we ended up like skipping some of it because you couldn't get into some of the events. There was not enough seats for all the people who were interested. The conference was about Photoshop. It was Photoshop World. I think it was 2005 or 2006. And it was like, some of the presentations were amazing.
Right.
And some of the like really big digital artists of the day were giving classes about how they did things. That's what I wanted to, it was why my company wanted me to be there. Cause I did worked on some of the art for them. And they're like, okay, you need to go brush up skill. Just go to this thing. It seems like a really big deal. Just go there and be there and do things.
Right.
Represent us.
Yes. Absorb information.
Yeah. And I came back and I was like, it was too big, too crush. It's like, I tried, guys. I tried.
It takes a certain mentality to be able to extract value out of shows like that. So for many, many years, I went to GDC, which is the Game Developers Conference. And it's exactly like what you're talking about. It's in San Francisco. But at that point, it started going when I was on East Coast too. But my company sent me every year, and that legend came in. And so
that's the best way to go. It's getting paid to go.
Absolutely. And you had to learn, how do you extract the best value? And there were two things that you needed to go after. First is networking. And so the more people that in the industry that were, worthwhile connecting with, do that.
That's what I did. I made sure that any of the companies you work with, I found their tables in exhibition hall and like made sure to be like, I'm here representing whatever company. I don't remember the name anymore. But
the people who are in the exhibit hall, chances are they're not the people you need to connect with. Those are the people actually.
But our vendors, yes, because like if they talk to my boss and be like, yes, I saw Melinda, she was there and we talked about blah 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 blah, and
sure, Yeah. I'm talking some more of a So from my perspective, I'm looking for other designers who are working at the same level that I'm at, so we can collaborate or we can just throw things at each other. And actually, I was part of. I still am part of a group called the Game Designers Workshop, which is all these really high level storytelling designers. And every year they do a gathering at GDC, and so that became a huge way to network with like-minded people, because I've done storytelling my entire career. It hasn't always been in novels. It's usually been in games, but or like even D&D modules. I've been doing it forever. But those exchanges are the most valuable and the most satisfying, is working with people like that. So GDC for years was a great place to go. I enjoyed it, but then there was things like E3, and E3, the Electronics Expo, the Electronic Entertainment Expo. That was just exactly like what you're talking about, which was
E3 is huge.
Everybody's trying to sell you everything. And when I was there representing Legend, I was talking about Unreal 2, and that's when I was on the stage in front of thousands of people, walking them through what we were working on for Unreal 2, and throwing out T-shirts and getting
you have to pause for 10 minutes for the applause to die down so you can continue. And then you're like, wait, what was I just saying before the applause started? So
I don't mind that kind of thing as much. I was also behind the scenes. I was doing pitches for Wheel of Time or Unreal 2. I was showing them, the actual thing up and running. And I would do the same thing. I would be like, okay, keep your arms and hands inside the car at all time. Let's go through it. And I would just show them all that stuff. So I've been doing I've been selling these kind of things for a while, which is, I think, why I take to these author signing events as well as I do. They're nothing really new. And I get a lot out of it. I get a lot out of the connection with the people, especially if there are people there, especially creatives. And there are a lot. People who read tend to, be writing or, have ideas. And especially younger ones, they want to know. They want tips. They want tricks. They want to know, how do I become an author? And I love that. I also teach a class at UC Berkeley. It actually, around COVID, it kind of went away. But I taught a game design class. And that was with high school students, foreign high school students, mostly foreign. There were some Americans, but they were going into college. So they were right on that cusp of figuring out what they want to do with their lives. And they were coming to UC Berkeley to figure out, is this a place I want to go? Is this the kind of experience I want to have? What is college going to be like? And so I would teach that class on game design. And the first day I would ask them, how many people have thought about game design as a career? And like maybe one or two. I mean, they're there to, I don't know, because they needed they fill a slot. But at the end, like 2/3 of them had their hands up, now considering game design. That was really gratifying. And
that's
just letting people know. And this is kind of a theme that I've got going in my books too. It's all about letting your creativity change the world despite all the obstacles in the way. Because I'm fully believe that everybody can impact the world in some way. Everybody has the potential to do that. The thing that I tell everybody is don't be afraid to stink, right? Don't be afraid to, because if you don't, your first work is going to stink always. Mm. But if that keeps you from actually writing or designing or whatever, then you're never going to have anything. And you can't change it until it exists.
Exactly. And the beauty of being an indie is that you can redo your book as many times as you like and republish it, recover it. Sure. You can retitle it. You can change you can put a different, pseudonym on there if you decide you don't want to be known as whatever your name is, or you have some reason that you want to write under a pseudonym. There's a lot of different reasons why people choose that. But you can just keep redoing the book over and over again. Like there's no done when you're an indie, when you're traditionally published, there is a done because you have to submit the final manuscript. Right. They edit it. You do your, your whatever changes they ask for. And then there's a certain point where you can make no more changes. It goes, it's in the publishing process and you cannot do anything to it. And a year or two later, it comes out as a finished book. But yeah.
Well, I have my own approach to that. If I've actually published it, I don't want to go back and retcon it. I had an original cover for my first book that I did it with an artist that I worked with from computer games. And I thought, she's great. We have a great working relationship. We've made lots of games together. We're going to come up with an awesome cover. Turns out neither of us really knew how to make a cover. And so I ended up having to redo that. And it was the best choice I could have made. And then I ended up with Mibelart, if you know who Mibelart is. Mm-hmm. Yes. Studio in Ukraine. And they were awesome. Really inexpensive, but they have unlimited changes. And I like art directing. I've done that a lot in my career. And so we iterated until we got to something great. And I love my covers. I mean, everybody who sees them, I was trying to go for something like, okay, I want to hit my genre. I want to hit YA fantasy. I want people to know it's YA fantasy. When they go for it, I'm just going to have an object on there because that's what some covers do. And we started there and they made an object. And my first cover was dice. And I looked at it and said, they look like flaming crates. That sucks. I don't want that. Let's put a hand in there for scale. And so we put the hand in there, did a couple of iterations on that, and then we ended up with this, which kind of looks awesome and ends up looking different from everything else because everybody's got a female character on there, kind of monochromatic. And then I made the next one, and I'm like, this hand interacting with something magic is kind of cool. Let's keep the brand going. Mm-hmm. And so I had a hand interacting with that. And then I went to the third one. I said, well, what's the hand going to interact with now? It's going to interact with a crystal globe with a house on the inside with fireflies or little magic fireflies bursting out. That's kind of cool too. And then for the finale, I have two hands because it's the finale. Interacting with the magic mirror there. But,
closure.
But you see I went from pretty much knowing I had no idea what I was doing for a cover to establishing what is clearly a brand that you can identify at one glance. And the reaction, especially at the signings, people look at these covers and they go, where did you get these? Because these are awesome.
No, they look very cool.
And they did not cost a fortune. Again, I'm all about ROI.
Yeah, and you have to be. I cry a little inside every time I see those posts where indie authors are saying that they spent $7,000 on the book to create it, and they've only made 3 sales, and because they don't have an audience, they're brand new. And my question is always, why did you spend $7,000 on it?
Yeah.
I mean,
did they go to a vanity press? I mean, how could you possibly spend that much?
They paid for the best possible editor they could get. They did multiple rounds of editing. They paid for the most. They mistook. There's this idea it wasn't there when I first started indie publishing because Craig Martell, who's created 20 books to 50K right, along with Michael Anderle. And, their whole thing is minimum viable product. Test. Put out the best that you can do without breaking the bank. and see how that does, and then reinvest in it. That's where the whole, because as an indie, we can constantly redo it if it's not working, but you at least get some money to invest back into it, and you can make it better and better.
Right.
And so that was the mindset then. And somehow that got twisted to be, you need to write 20 books in a year to make $50,000, which no one ever said ever. And you need to spend as much money.
Though. You can see how people might think that.
Well, they couldn't put 20 books to $50,000 to retire on because that's really what it was. It's if you had 20 books and you sold each one for $7 a day, you'd make $50,000 in a year, and you can retire on that.
Right.
That's the whole premise behind 20 books to 50K, and that always has been, but it's been twisted to mean many things that it doesn't actually mean. And somehow this belief came about sometime around the pandemic. I think I started seeing it that this is that was at the height of designers doing whatchamacallit. You don't see them anymore. Very few, not very often. Auctions. And hundreds and hundreds of indie authors that go to these auctions and bid on these books, driving the prices, these covers, driving the prices of them up into the thousands of dollars.
You're talking about pre-mades?
Yeah. Yes. I asked a few of the authors who spent that I watched purchase these covers for over $2,000. And I asked them later, I was like, because I knew a couple of them from around Facebook, and I said, how did that book do? Did you was it worth it? Here, I'm curious, does having a very expensive cover, does it have any impact on sales? And they said, all of them that asked said no, that they regret spending that kind of money on it because they did not make it back in sales. They didn't make anywhere near that back in sales. Maybe eventually they may, but they regretted making that outlay at that time when the book hadn't even come out yet, because then it was in the red before it came out with a $2,000 cover. And if they spent several $1,000s on editing, there's your couple of thousand in the hole. And if you're trying to be a full-time author and live off your income, I'm not a full-time author. I have a full-time job. So I could frivolously spend money on my books if I had it, but I don't, so I can't. But you can't really do that, because then what are you going to pay your rent with? What are your mortgage, or what are you going to buy groceries with?
Well, to a lot of people, this is just a very expensive hobby. And, you're just not going to make money off of it if you're going to be spending that kind of money on the kinds of things you need to do. You can still get a quality cover and quality editing and all of those things if you know where to look. That isn't the first place you look, because the first place you look is probably going to be someone who saw you coming, and they're going to jack up the prices for you, and they may not even give you the quality product that you really need. People bidding on pre-mades up to $2,000. I've seen them go beyond that. That's insane. I mean,
I've seen auctions.
For that kind of money, you can get a top fantasy artist to do it specifically for you based on your book. Why would you get caught up?
They get caught up in the auction mentality, and there's still a few designers who do the auction, but it used to be there was a couple every weekend, and at the height of it, and a couple of, which I thought was crazy. A couple of the auctions, you weren't even bidding on a specific cover. You were bidding to be the first person to choose one of the covers to purchase. So you're bidding all this money to pay so you can pick your cover from the batch of pre-mades. You weren't even bidding on a specific.
I was never even aware of this. This is terrible.
This is it. Well, with the AI art and all of and Mibble art coming on the scene, and other lesser, less expensive options, some of that stuff. Some of that sort of went the heyday was definitely in 2020 when we were all stuck at home, and I don't know if it was because this was exciting. I used to watch them, but I didn't have the money to participate in any of them. But there'd be quite a lot of people bidding on it, and people would drop out as it got past their ability to pay. But there'd be some who were in it. They just decided that this must be the cover, and I'm you could have just got someone to do something similar.
Absolutely.
For
really fantastic artwork for, you can get top of the game for $1,000. You can get a
but
painting.
It doesn't, just getting a super expensive cover does not guarantee sales.
No. And that's
the thing that people don't understand.
ROI. You know how much I paid for my covers? I started when Miblar was a little bit cheaper, but I think I paid for my first cover $160.
Yeah. My least expensive cover made the most money.
Yeah. I mean, why would you pay more if you're getting quality work, especially custom quality work for your book? I don't understand it. That's crazy. Throwing money at the problem isn't going to solve the problem.
And that's where, and sometime between like 2019 and now, like somehow newer indie authors and even indie authors who've been in the game a little while got this idea that the more you spend on the book, the more money you'll make. And then they're deeply disappointed when that isn't the case. When in reality, it's the more people who know the book is coming, who want it, the more books you sell. And that has nothing to do with your editor, because nobody's read the book. It
could be.
And I can do with your cover. It could be a $5 cover. But if they have decided that they really want this book because of the story that they're expecting inside.
Yeah. And I don't think anybody should walk away assuming that either of us are saying that you shouldn't invest a certain amount of money in getting a good cover and getting editing services and doing your formatting. Maybe some of those things you can do yourself, maybe not. But it's worthwhile. It's worthwhile having a professional do those things, and it doesn't have to break the bank.
But if you can't, I just don't want anybody to go into debt. If you absolutely cannot afford it,
get authors do it yourself to read as much as you can if you can't afford it. But
get other authors, use the free editing software, get other people to read it. Find other ways to get eyes on the book to help you find any mistakes. And concentrate on getting the word out about it, because the more books you sell, then you can go back later and get that edit. Because I've seen people do that, and that works very well. And you can put in another edition.
Sure. The point that I wanted to make is
go on.
I'm fending off a lot of like digital marketers and predators who are looking for people who are uninformed.
Yes.
And you were asking about, where is that message coming from that they need to do all those things? And it could be that that's the message that they're shopping around, because I don't listen to them. I don't even engage with them. But if you don't know not to, then people originally they're coming into it going, okay, where am I going to get a publisher? How am I going to get an agent? And how's all that going to work? And if that doesn't work, then who's going to tell me what to do? And if they find someone like that who tells them, oh, well, you need to spend $15,000 to get your book professionally edited, get the cover made, and then printed, they're going to say, oh, well, this guy sounds like he knows what he's talking about. So I don't know if that's the case, but I would be not surprised to find out that there are predators out there, and that's why these people are spending that kind of money.
I think it's partly that with newer authors, but I think it's also that they see these posts in the big author groups of people that are making millions of dollars, and they see, because some of them list how much they spent on editing and covers, and they don't realize that number is not for one book. Some of them, especially if they're if they're KU, that number might be 12 books that they put out this year, or 20 books, because some authors write shorter books and they write very fast. Because if that's all you do is write for 4 or 5 hours per day, you can rack up quite a bit of words in 30 days. And which I think is amazing. And I would love to have
I'm not in that world at all.
And the ability to do that, but I have the full-time job. But so they don't realize, they just see the success posts. And some people try to be they put in all the expenses and stuff, but sometimes they might forget a crucial piece of information, like how many books is this for? And some people just assume, oh, you made $1 million off one book. And that's not quite the case. And I've seen that, but I've seen the authors make posts before, and it's hard when you're trying to make a success post and you're trying to think of all the things that you would have wanted to know. Yeah. And they're trying really hard to list these things out, and you forget a couple of details. Sure. And a newer author may not understand that there's a few details missing from this by accident, and they're assuming that, oh, one book will get me $1 million if I spend this amount of money because that's what that person did.
That's true. I see some posts by people saying, hey, look, I got a publishing contract. And of course, it's a vanity press. and they're going to charge
Yes,
them X
I
amount
see
of money.
those too.
I see a lot of those, and I think
A lot of it is $15,000 lately is the number I've seen people say.
Because the dream is to be published. That's where you start.
Mhm.
You don't even have to know anything about this industry before having that dream. And that's the first thing you encounter when you start looking into it, is someone will publish you and they'll charge you $15,000 to do it. Because these people they'll take $15,000 from anybody. It doesn't matter what your book is.
Exactly.
Like. So I think that's still a big problem. I
100% agree. I see those posts every day. Somebody, thankfully, like I'm seeing more new authors, like who are in author groups posting like, hey, I got an offer from X person about X thing.
Everybody piles on.
This is a vanity, run away, don't do this. Or the scam marketing messages that you were talking about. So I'm hoping that indie authors are the newer ones are getting a little wiser and realizing in our world that's full of scammers and things that like I should check with other people before I say yes.
As long as they find their way to some of these groups, because a lot of them don't have that connection yet. So
there's some good ones. There's like Fantasy Author Network or something. I think it's a big one, and there's a lot of newer authors, and I see a lot of them posting in. They're like, oh, first time poster, and they're asking about a vanity press, and people gently dissuade them from having anything to do with the person.
I have to get going here pretty soon.
Okay, so let's bring it back to the series.
Because I kind of think that we could talk forever.
The Chronicles of Chaos. Yeah, I mean, you're welcome to come back and we can have other discussions about it. I'm always looking for. I love the interviews, but I think it'd be like, I think other topics would be good too. Sure. I'm not quite sure what the other topics would be, but I work too much.
We covered a lot. In this interview.
But if anybody has any other topics that they want covered, they can certainly like find some folks who want to talk about it.
Sure, absolutely. But yes, I am going to be releasing my finale, which will bring my series to a conclusion of 25 years on Tuesday. That's February 27th. You can find me at mysterium.blog. Almost all my links and everything can be found from there. I sell signed copies of my books online. You can find your way to Amazon, where the ebook will be released on the 27th. And I think it's a pretty good series. I think people should read it.
Is this multi-point of view? I forgot to ask that. Like that was a question I had earlier, and then we got onto many other topics, and we followed the path away from the question.
Yeah, it is close third.
Okay.
With multi POVs throughout.
I like that. That's one of my. I like that.
I can't even imagine it being anything else. That's just how I write it.
That's my favorite. That's what all my books. Well, no, I have a couple that are not, that are first person, because certain character demanded it that way. But they were those books were really hard to write because it was just I kept putting it in the third person. I was like, no, wait, wrong. We need to fix this. We're only in this person's point of view. We can't give other people's heads a look.
First person present tense is what kills me. I just can't even read it. I just start and I just rubs me the wrong way. I'm sure there are lots of good books out there that use it, but it's just not for me.
I can do it if it's an audiobook, especially if there's a specific subgenre of audiobooks that are like podcast style. Those I can do because it's like you're listening to them discover, like, and only if it's like a mystery, mystery sliding towards horror, where like it has to be super narrow because I get it. Those I can do because those work really well with that, because you need that very closed in thing to get, and those work really well. Like there was this one, I can't remember the name of it. It was very good. It was, I think Dakota Fanning was the narrator for it. It was excellent. It was a blogger turned podcaster who started a true crime thing to the character in the story, and was trying to solve this girl's murder in her town, and it had to be very closed in because it was a very small cast. There was a very limited number of characters, and one of them was the killer. And so it had to be, because you didn't like the climax when the killer was like came after her. Like it was shocking because you were only in her point of view.
Right.
It would not have worked the twist as well if it was any other way. So I do have to say that there are some cases where that can work very, very well and be
totally
very
with you.
effective.
I'm totally with. And a couple of times that I've been exposed to it, it was just the wrong choice and was clearly the wrong choice. And I mean, one was a historical flashback, first person present tense. And I'm like, I'm not bought in at all. Like the first page, it's like, no thanks.
Yeah, I wish I could remember the name of that thing. It was short. Okay. It was only like 2 hours, but it was very good. But thank you so much for coming on, and hopefully you'll be back. Oh, what else are you writing? Because if this is over, what are you doing next?
Well, I have told myself I wasn't going to have to answer that question until I was completely done with this book, and I'm still editing the audiobook. I suspect that what's going to happen is I'm going to write the actual reader magnet that I should have written a long time ago. I haven't. I've written 4 books now, but no reader magnet. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to choose a character, and I'm going to go and write something short and free. And after that, I'm not sure. I mean, really, honestly, it depends on if these things actually get made into a TV series or movie. If they do, I'm sticking around. I'm going to do another series after this one in the same world. Because that's where I want to live. I love this world. I love these characters, and I don't want to leave them. But we'll see if there's a real.
You don't have to. You're an indie author. There's no big publisher out there telling you need to move on to something else. You know, you can choose to write a sequel.
But also, a lot of people won't start a series unless it's finished. They don't trust the author enough to not finish the series. And
I haven't had that.
I've had that at a lot of my signings. They'll say, one person was ready to buy the whole thing, and I told them that the series wasn't finished, and they stopped. I didn't make the sale. So I know that that's true. So I wanted to have a complete series and then figure out what to do after that. But I can do a series right after this one. It'll just be the Chronicles of Order or something like that. It'll be the next Chronicles after this one. And the way that I end the series, it's really clear that it's done, but it's not so clear that it has to be done.
I see. No, that's very cool. Yeah, I think the only reason I didn't encounter that is because my newsletter is an extension of the book series, and all my books are related. So it is one unfolding storyline, and I think that's the only. And there's I have over 20 books published, and I add between 3 and 6. That all depends on the characters and how much or how little they follow the outline per year. So I have a good track record of every few months putting out another book that's related to the whole thing and expanding it out. So I think that's why I haven't experienced it. And my newsletter, like I said, is very much an I don't know what the right word is, offshoot of my biggest series. So the characters are very much alive and talking to you every week on Mondays. Wow.
Okay.
And telling you what their next adventure is going to be and how they're trying to get me to write it.
You're speaking to an established audience. And so that absolutely makes sense. If you've got people who are coming along with you, that's great. I need to introduce more people to my work, and I'm constantly doing that. And so I don't want to give people a chance, an excuse not to pick up the books from the beginning. And so,
right.
So that's one of the reasons I decided to bring the series to a conclusion.
That's valid.
It also kind of felt like it was the right thing to do with this story, because that's where it wanted to go. But I do have to get going. So
yes, thank you very much for coming on. And this has been another episode of Fantasy Lore and More. And today we had Glen Dahlgren, and we were talking about the Chronicles of Chaos series and many other things. And we'll hopefully have him back to talk about more things.
Yeah, I'd love to come back.
Yeah, maybe we'll talk about the individual books. I don't know. He'll come back and talk about another topic because this was very fascinating. I think there's additional things we could branch out
talk
from
for hours,
here.
honestly.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Sure of it.
You're welcome to come back anytime. And yeah, so that'll do it for this episode. And we'll be back tomorrow with another author, another fantasy book. So hope you'll be, all the links will be, that he's given me will be in the description in the show notes. And I think it's all the links that he just mentioned in there, if I remember correctly. But it's now almost 9 o'clock for me, so my brain might be slightly melted. But if not, then if he mentioned a link that wasn't, we'll get it and we'll put it in there so you'll be able to click. And yeah, so thank you so much. Have a great day, a great night. I've been Melinda Kucsera, your indie fantasy author, and this has been Glen Dahlgren, and thank you so much.
Thanks.